All right, continuing our tour of JavaScript on, we're going to take a look at arrays now, which I mentioned previously are a subtype or a special casing of the object type in JavaScript. But they're very powerful and interesting, and we'll use them all the time. So let's do that now. To create arrays in JavaScript, I can either use the new keyword and the array type like that, or I can actually just use the literal notation with 2 square brackets like that. If I print out their values, you see they're both arrays with nothing in them. I'm going to be using this almost exclusively in all of my code and throughout these live lessons. I honestly don't recall the last time I created an array that way. One of the key new features in array is the length property. And so that lets me figure out how many things are in the array like that. If I do a type of array, however, you'll see that I get object. We did mention previously that arrays are objects, and the original specifications for the JavaScript language had them return the type also as object. And that can be confusing for us because there will be times in our programs when we'll want to know if something really is an array. There is a new non-standard language extension that, most importantly for us, V8 Node support, and that is array.isArray. And for that, it'll definitely tell me if something is an array versus if it's an object or a number or something like that. So this is the way in our code we'll determine if something is an array. Arrays are numerically indexed in JavaScript. So if I say var r3 equals cat, mat, and hat, like that, we'll see it has 3 elements. If I ask to print them, that's at index 0, index 1, index 2, and so I can loop through them like in any other language. I equals 0, I is less than r3.length, I plus plus. And then I can say r3, I like that, and hopefully I did that correctly. I did, and it loops through and prints out the 3 values, and then the result of the for loop is an undefined. So it is numerically indexed. I can add things to the end of an array in one of 2 ways. I can say r3.length equals bat, and you'll see the return value of that is the value of what I just added. Or I can use a function on the array called push, which lets me push things to the end, and I can say splat. And the difference between these two is that the push function returns the new number of items in the array. So now if I print out R3, you'll see it has 5 things in it. Now, an interesting thing about these arrays is that they're not sparse arrays. Let's say this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What happens now if I want to say array 3 at index 12 equals, I don't know, fat. That rhymes. Okay, now if I do r3.length, you'll see it's actually 13 long. It's a 0 based index, so I just added the 13th element. And if I actually print out the value of this array now, you'll see what it's done between the previous maximal element and the new one I've inserted. It's actually gone and filled the intermediate elements in with just null values. So if I actually ask for r310, not null, undefined, the undefined values. So I don't really have sparse arrays, but I can specify arbitrary indexes and stuff, but you just have to be careful. You will get these undefined values in the sort of unused indexes in my array. I can use the delete keyword that we saw in the previous section on arrays. Let's say I don't like the word splat because it's 5 characters long, and no, let's get rid of the word hat because it's a better example. I don't like the word hat. I want to get rid of it. So I want to say get rid of the thing at index 2 in my array. And I actually have to spell the name of the variable correctly, like that. So you'll see that worked. But now if I print out array 3, you'll see it didn't actually remove it. What it did is it actually just set the value at index 2 to be undefined. And that's, definitely valid, but it might not be what I wanted. What I might have really wanted was this array with just that whole value completely removed. So What I can do to get that functionality is I can use a function called splice. And splice takes a starting index and then the number of items to delete, and will return those extracted ones, and it will modify the original array to no longer have those. So what I'm going to do is I want to get rid of these two things. So I'm going to say array3.splice starting at 0, 1, 2, and I want to get rid of 2 elements. And so you'll see it extracted undefined in bat. And now, if I ask for array3, you'll see that it doesn't have those two things anymore. And if I ask for the length, you'll see it's gone down to 11. So that's the basics of working with arrays. Let's look at a couple of interesting functions on it. Let's create an array here called var nums equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that. Great. So we've already shown the push function. I can say nums.push 111, and you'll see now that it has 7 elements in it instead of just 6. I can also say, and if I actually print out nums, you'll see that. I can say nums.pop, and that returns 111, and it does remove that element from the array. If I want to work with the beginning of the array instead of the end of the array, I can say nums.unshift, and I want to insert the value -10. And now you'll see it has 7 elements, but the -10 is at the beginning. And if I want to get rid of that first element, I can say nums.shift. It returns -10, and that element has been removed from the beginning of the array. We saw in the previous chapter, or the previous sublesson, I could use the split function to split a string into an array. The opposite of that is the join function, which lets me take an array and convert it back into a string. So if I have the array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can join everything. Let's use a colon. And you'll see that I've created a string with the contents of that array joined together. All right, I can also sort arrays in JavaScript using the sort function. So let's create a array here called 3185, I don't know, 21, called jumble nums. And let's actually sort the jumble nums array like this. And you'll see it returns the correctly sorted array. Sometimes it's not exactly what I want the sort function. If I use it to sort names or something, it might not work exactly in the way I expect. So let's say var names equals Mark, Maria, Alfred, and Zimbu. Okay, so if I print out names like that, if I say names.sort, you'll see it's prioritized uppercase letters over lowercase letters, which is not what I want. I would like Mark to come before Maria. So I'd like to do a case-insensitive sort. So my way to get around this in JavaScript is to pass in a function to the array sort. So I can say names.sort, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a function which will be given 2 values to compare, like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a1 equals a.2 lowercase, and then I'm also going to say b1 equals b.2 lowercase, like that. And I'm going to say if a1 is less than b1, return -1. If a1 is greater than b1, return 1, otherwise return 0. And then that's the end of the function, and that's the end of that. And now you'll see by using this case-insensitive sort and returning, standard -1, 0, or 1, depending on less than, equal to, or greater than, I can now sort my array more naturally. So that's the first time we've actually written our own little pass-in function like this since we did the web server back in the first lesson. So we'll be doing that pretty much nonstop throughout these live lessons, so definitely get used to that. It's kind of powerful and cool. There is another neat new extension in many new modern JavaScript implementations, including V8 and Node. And that is a function on array called for each. And what we can do there is we can say names.for each, and then again you'll pass it in a function with the value, and then I can say console.log value like that. And it, excuse me, for each of the values in the array, it will call your function, and you can do whatever you want with it. So I've just printed them out like that. So that's some functions on arrays. That's the basics of working with arrays. We'll use them all throughout our projects here in the live lessons. So I'm sure you'll see many more interesting things on them. But those are sort of the key new things we wanted to get comfortable with. And we'll take a break now and come back and talk about type comparisons and conversions.